welcome back to my channel. We are in the middle of a series all about Hamlet, where I go in depth about things that I've learned scene by scene in this play that I love so much. So if you're looking for only summary, this is not the place for you probably, because I will not only be summarizing the play but also bringing some of my additional thoughts to the table, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So if you have any other ideas about this scene or you have any questions, please do add them to the comments below. So today we're talking about Act 1, Scene 3. Now, Act 1, Scenes 1 and 2, just the last two scenes, kind of got on a roll. There was a ghost, and then Hamlet learned about the ghost, and he plans to meet the guards and Horatio on the platform that night. Scene 3 seems to deviate from what you expect from the play at this point. You are suddenly in Polonius's house. He's the king's advisor, of course. I assume that you've read or watched this scene. If you are watching this video, I'm going to assume a certain amount of knowledge here. So Polonius's house is where Act 1, Scene 3 begins. And it's Laertes and Ophelia, the two children of Polonius, who are alone at the beginning. Laertes is preparing to go back to France, where he had spent some time, but then he came back for the coronation and the wedding and the funeral and all the to-do in Denmark. If you want to know any more about that, you can watch my last video on Act 1, Scene 2. So Laertes and Ophelia are here, and Laertes is saying goodbye to his sister. And it's actually pretty touching. Right off the bat, you can tell that they care about each other. Laertes says, "My necessaries are embarked, farewell." So he's on his way out the door at the very, very beginning. And he says, "And sister, do not sleep, but let me hear from you." And she says, "Do you doubt that?" There's this kind of friendly banter between the two of them. He wants to hear how she's doing, and she definitely plans to get back to him. I'm sure there are other ways to read that opening to their relationship, but based on what happens later in the play, as well as later in this scene, it seems pretty clear that they are close brother and sister, that they really do care about each other. You'd think that that would be the moment when Laertes would say, "Okay, bye. It's been a nice to see you on this trip, but I'm going back to Paris," where all the culture and the action are. But Laertes stops and he says, "Oh, well, one more thing. Hamlet, your relationship with Hamlet, you should not take that super seriously. Instead, you should be really careful, because chances are he will not actually marry you. So you need to prepare yourself for that very distinct possibility." He calls Hamlet's flirtation and their relationship the trifling of his favor. He's very dismissive of Hamlet and the way that he is involved with Ophelia. Now this brings up some questions in my mind. What has Hamlet done, or what kind of a person must Hamlet be if Laertes is so suspicious of Hamlet's intent with Ophelia? It makes sense in this culture, and Laertes explains too, right at the beginning of the scene, that Hamlet can't necessarily marry the person that he'd want to marry. Since he's the Prince of Denmark and he's heir to the throne, chances are he'll have to marry for political advantage. He will have to marry a princess or somebody like that. And Ophelia just isn't important enough for her to make the shortlist. But still, Laertes is really concerned that Hamlet is just going to stay with Ophelia for a while, sleep with her, and then, with her honor lost, leave her. Because, you know, once he slept with her, then in this culture she's essentially ruined. So Laertes says you need to protect yourself, and he goes on for quite a while about this. If you see this is where he starts talking about that. And he continues on. See that big long section? That's all Laertes warning Ophelia against the advances of Hamlet. And Ophelia is really gracious, I think, about all of this. And she says, "I will the effect of this good lesson keep as watchman to my heart." But she adds, "Follow your own advice." She says, "Do not as some ungracious pastors do, Do not, as some ungracious pastors do, show me the steep and thorny way to heaven, and recks not his own reed, or follows not his own advice. So make sure that you are listening to your own advice, brother, out there in Paris, those Parisian ladies, and keep your own honor and heart intact as well. At that, Laertes is about to leave, but then no, their father comes in, Polonius. Polonius is such a great character. I love Polonius so much. He's such a buffoon. He's a windbag. He thinks he's all that in a bag of chips. He thinks that he has all the best advice that there is to give. He loves some wordplay. I mean, if he sees some wordplay, he'll chase after it like a kitten with a butterfly and just get all distracted with how clever he's being, which I think it's almost a little bit Shakespeare-like in a way. Not everything about him. I don't think Shakespeare was a buffoon, but Shakespeare had just a weakness for wordplay as well. So Polonius comes and says, Are you still here? The people are waiting for you. But wait, I have some advice. And again, I think there's a bit of a father-like-son situation going here. Look at the advice. He says, why are you taking so long? They're waiting for you. Wait, here's some advice. And he goes on forever. This is so Polonius-y. And some of the advice is good. It's kind of a mixed bag. There's so many pieces of advice that he gives. It actually reminds me a bit of the poem If by Rudyard Kipling. If you've never read If, it's a fantastic poem just giving advice to a young person who's growing up. And Polonius gives all these different pieces of advice as well. Those friends thou hast in their adoption tried, grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel. So hang on to those friends that you have, avoid getting involved in fights, but end them if you're in them, all that stuff. At the end of this, there is the really famous line, this above all to thine own self be true. I think it's kind of funny that this comes from Polonius, because people quote this all the time, this above all to thine own self be true, as an inspirational quotation. But it comes from the mouth of this ridiculous character in Shakespeare. So just saying, this above all to thine own self be true, William Shakespeare, is kind of messing with the source. You always have to keep in mind which character is speaking this line. Is it somebody that we should take seriously? Is it not somebody that we should take seriously? And Polonius definitely rides that line and is more on the side of not taking him quite so seriously. So next time you see a hipster meme with those words over it, remember, this is Polonius speaking. This is also part of a great song in the Gilligan's Island episode. I did grow up watching it. There's an episode when all the people on the island put on Hamlet the musical because they want to impress this producer who's been stranded suddenly on the island with them. And one of the songs that they come up with is this, neither a borrower nor a lender be. It's pretty hilarious. If you haven't seen it, you should look it up online. I love it. After he's finished with his advice, Laertes finally says, okay, I'm really gonna go now. Goodbye, everybody. Remember what I said, Ophelia? And Ophelia says, okay, bye. As soon as Laertes leaves, Polonius turns to Ophelia and says, okay, what did he say? You'll find that this is a trend with Polonius. He always is extremely nosy, unbelievably nosy about what his children are doing, about what the king's children are doing, about everyone. He wants to know it all. He is constantly spying and asking questions that are not really his business. So he asks what Laertes said to Ophelia, and she's honest about it. I think Ophelia is a good character. There's a lot of evidence later on in the play, and I'll get into it, to suggest that she has already slept with Hamlet and not followed Laertes' advice, which is sad for her because, again, chances are Hamlet will leave her after all that. But anyway, so Polonius starts repeating a lot of the same advice and really talking down to Ophelia as well. One of my favorite lines, early lines of Polonius, is when Ophelia says, he hath, Hamlet that is, my lord, of late made many tenders of his affection to me. And Polonius replies, affection? Pooh, you speak like a green girl. affection, poo, that's hilarious. That's ridiculous. It's gold. It's one of those things you just want to take wildly out of context and put William Shakespeare on the bottom. Affection, poo. So he speaks down to her and has all this wordplay. Suddenly, he says, "Okay, I'll tell you what you should think, Ophelia. Let me tell you. Think yourself a baby. You've believed these tenders. You've taken these tenders for true pay. Tender yourself more dearly." You can see him getting more and more distracted by the word tender as time goes on, and he's thinking, "Okay, what's another meaning I could use for the word tender so I can sound cooler?" So he goes through every possible meaning of the word tender before Ophelia stops him and says, I think Hamlet's actually a good guy. He has a lot of things going for him." And we find out later what some of those things are. Not only is he a handsome guy, but he's also really intelligent, really eloquent. Everybody looks up to him. He's fashionable, they mention. There are a lot of things, and those are just some of the more superficial ones that she looks up to. But Polonius still says, nope, shut it down, and never speak to him again. That's how the scene ends. Polonius does admit that it is difficult when you're young to see the perils of love, because Polonius hints that he also struggled with this burning passion as a youth as well, which brings up some more questions, like where's Mom? Where's Mrs. Polonius in this whole thing? Does she were they married? Did she die? Or what? He brings up more than once that he understands what it's like to just be absolutely out of your mind with love. I want to know that backstory. Yet, despite apparently commiserating with Ophelia for the love, the passion that she has for Hamlet, he forbids her to even speak to Hamlet. Now, at this point, if you think from Hamlet's point of view, his father has died. His uncle has taken the throne. He feels betrayed by his mother because she married Claudius so quickly. And now the ghost of his father has appeared. Hamlet is not in a good way. He is emotionally very crushed. And it's at this moment that Ophelia is going to cut off their relationship without a word. This is probably not going to bode well. And I feel sorry for Hamlet at this point. He seems like a really sympathetic character. That changes a little bit, but at this point, I feel bad for him. So that's what I have for you with Act 1, Scene 3. Obviously, I could have gone line by line. There's just so much good stuff in all of Hamlet, but that's all I wanted to bring up today. So again, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. If you liked this, give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Mondays.